Poof. And with that, the 2024-25 season has come to a close. Welcome in to Daily Faceoff Live. I suppose the first off-season edition of Daily Faceoff Live. We're streaming live on the DFO YouTube. And as always, we are presented by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Tyler Yaremchuk and Frank Seravalli with you. And Frank, can you feel your body shifting into off-season mode? The insider senses, are they tingling?
They've been tingling for a while. It's been, look, once you get down to 30 teams that are not in the postseason and that's all they're thinking about, that tends to be what a large majority of the calls that you're making are about. So it's been, it's definitely been a busy few weeks. Some of it kept under wraps, some of it not as busy as other teams might have hoped. And with that, either way, free agency, less than 2 weeks away. The draft, 9 days away. Giddy up.
Yeah, going to be a lot of movement in those next 9 days, I would expect. We're going to talk free agency a little bit later on in the show with our big segment, but let's start with the Stanley Cup once again being handed out in Sunrise. The Florida Panthers are back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. They finish off their third straight Stanley Cup final appearance with another Stanley Cup, Frank. And I mean, a really impressive game from the Panthers. This one was, I guess, a similar game script to game 5 of this series, where the first 3 minutes, it was like, okay, the Oilers got some jump. They're good. And then the opportunistic Florida Panthers, they really just needed one mistake by Edmonton, pucks in the back of the net. And this Florida team showed they are too good and too mature to squander that momentum.
Look, this was utter dominance really for vast chunks of this series. This was really one of the more lopsided 6-game series that we've seen, just judging by the scoreboard. 255 minutes compared to 33 for the Edmonton Oilers in playing with the lead. They suffocated Edmonton's top players. Edmonton mentioned after the game, Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, both of them had nothing but praise for the Panthers and the way that they played this series. This was one team purely dictating how a round would play out. And there was some back and forth. There was seesaw battles and moments in time where the momentum changed hands. But on the balance of it, this was a run of dominance for the Panthers. And they are the undisputed best team in the league and have been for a couple years now. So with that, they hoist the Stanley Cup, second straight year. And it's just amazing to think how different things are now compared to not 10, 15 years ago, but 5 years ago in South Florida. Before Matthew Tkachuk got there, who would have thought that the Stanley Cup would be hanging out at the top of the elbow room the way it is again this morning? It's an amazing scene for a team that I think is the true definition of a team. Look at the way that they handed out the Stanley Cup after they won it for a second year in a row. It went from Alexander Barkov to Nate Schmidt to Seth Jones to a whole bunch of guys that didn't have a chance to win it before. AJ Greer, and go through the list. It got to Mackie Samoskevich, who didn't even play in the final and barely played in the playoffs, before it ever got to Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand and Matthew Tkachuk, the rest of the group. They wanted everyone that even played a little part in this, Vitek Vanacek not playing in the playoffs, to get a taste of what it was like to win a Stanley Cup on home ice before they got their second spin at it. If that doesn't tell you what a true definition of a team is, I don't know what will, because it wasn't about the superstars, which is why none of their players won the Conn Smythe last year, is because they didn't distinguish themselves from one another.
Yeah, and listen, off the ice, we heard a lot about it, and it was Matthew Tkachuk who does a lot of the talking, obviously. Like, this team is so tight-knit. This team loves playing for each other. And on the ice, again, I feel like the result in this series was a product of that. Like, yes, Alexander Barkov could go toe-to-toe and saw things off with Connor McDavid, and that Matthew Tkachuk line was a thorn in the side of Leon Draisaitl. And then you get to a third line that has Anton Lundell, Eetu Luostarinen, and Brad Marchand, who might have been the best player in this series, even if he didn't win the Conn Smythe. And it's like, how can you match up with that, right? Like, the Oilers just didn't have the horses, but it's because you looked across and, like, I don't know if we'll ever see a top 9 that's this loaded in the NHL again, Frank.
Which is why I would put this Panther team up there against anyone that's won the cup in the salary cap era, whether it would be the Detroit Red Wings or the Pittsburgh Penguins, who went back to back in their own right, the LA Kings. I mean, maybe the Chicago Blackhawks from that 3-team and 5-year span. But even then, there were so many different iterations of it. Which one would you pick as the best one? This Panther team is just as good as any of them, if not better.
Yeah, I am right there with you, and I don't think that's the sort of, recency bias kind of thing creeping in. Wanted to give a shout out before we talk Conn Smythe to Sam Reinhart. He continues to just be Mr. Elimination Game for this Panthers team. The Stanley Cup winner last year, and then he gets the ball rolling and then finishes a couple of empty netters, but finishes with a 4-goal game to wrap up this cup final as well. Was there a part of you, Frank, who was like, maybe Sam Reinhart deserves some Conn Smythe love just on that Game 6 performance alone?
No, it doesn't really ever enter into the equation, but what a flex though. Like, I'm thinking just over here in my basement where I do the shows, I have a big frame with a flag and a photo and the ball from when I got a hole in one. And right next to it is the scorecard. And I'm thinking, like, what an absolute flex if Sam Reinhart gets the official box score from that game and frames it like, oh yeah, not a big deal. I scored the cup clinching goal 1 year ago. And this time around, I mean, a late Vasily Podkolzin goal spoiled it, but yeah, not a big deal. I had 4, including the first ever Florida Panthers playoff hat trick in the clinching game of the 2025 Stanley Cup Final. Just put it on the table.
Yes, put it on the table, Frank. Eloquently said. Let's talk a little Conn Smythe. Sam Bennett with his 15-goal postseason. Since the year 2000, only one player scored more goals than that in a playoffs. It was Zach Hyman last year. Only Sid and Ovi have gotten to 15. It's a very exclusive club with just the 4 guys there, but it just shows how dominant Sam Bennett was at points here and how clutch he was too. Like, a lot of really, really big goals. The Conn Smythe voting was very, very close, though. 76 points to Sam Bennett, 68 to Brad Marchand. You had Bennett at number 1, though.
Yeah, I wrestled with it for a while, but I think what I ultimately came down to was Sam Bennett played more minutes. Sam Bennett had a more consistent run from start to finish. He was the Florida Panthers, I guess you could say, spark plug. He scored in each of the first games of all 4 rounds. He scored in 5 of the 6 games in this cup final. Last night, Game 6 was the only exception. I should say, at least 1 point in 5 of the 6 games. And his record that he set, most goals ever scored on the road in a single playoff with 12, led the entire postseason with 15, tied for the second most ever scored in a cap era. I don't think you could have gone wrong with either guy. And Marchand scored some incredibly clutch goals that really were just backbreakers for the Edmonton Oilers, particularly in the cup final. But I felt like Bennett's more complete overall total effort in the entire playoffs is what gave him the edge on my ballot.
11-8 were the first place votes. I was just counting those up. I needed another half second. And every single voter had Bennett and Marchand 1 or 2. So they didn't slip to third in anyone's ballot. Again, just showing how close it was between those two, and Sam Bennett now heading towards unrestricted free agency. I'll put you on the spot with this one.
I was just going to say, he's the third player ever to win the Conn Smythe without having a contract in place for next season. If you're looking for a bit of trivia, the only other 2 were Claude Lemieux in 1995 with the New Jersey Devils and J.S. Giguère with the Anaheim Ducks in 2003 in a losing fashion. But by the way, Claude Lemieux ended up moving on after the Devils.
Talk about that in a second. I want to put you on the spot. Do you remember the last time Conn Smythe voting would have been this close?
It would have been... There was a recent close one, but definitely the closest one ever was Crosby and Kessel.
Yeah, I remember that one. That's the one that was going to pop. That kind of popped into my head too, because I remember there being a really big debate about that because Kessel was just doing, yeah.
Well, that was actually the push for the PHWA to make votes transparent. Like, we had been talking about it for a long time. But I kind of kicked up a hornet's nest because I went individually to each voter and said, hey, who'd you vote for? And
Mhm.
I just tallied the votes myself before we ever did that and put them out publicly. And I wrote the story saying Sidney Crosby won by 1 point, essentially, is what it was. The league wouldn't confirm it. And then that kind of ended up as an organization putting us over the top to then just reveal them.
Interesting. I like that backstory. All right, let's talk about this Florida Panthers team moving forward. On the Canadian broadcast, the first thing Gene Principe asked Sam Reinhart on the ice was, so do you think you have the group to get a third now? And I mean, of course, that's going to be the talk. A lot of these guys, key pieces, guys like Reinhart, Barkov, Kachuk, and stuff, they're going to be in Florida for a long time, but there's a really big trio of players, Frank, that don't have contracts for next year. Not just Sam Bennett, but Brad Marchand, who came over at the deadline, Aaron Ekblad, who was the first overall pick over a decade ago for this Panthers team. How many of these guys do you think the Panthers can run back? Like, is it possible to bring back both Bennett and Marchand?
It's amazing watching Bill Zito on the ice, the Panthers' ultra-aggressive GM, after emotionally hoisting the cup and letting out a roar. In an interview just a couple minutes later said, I think we can bring them all back. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's kind of like a mama pup with her litter. Like, yeah, we can keep them all. No, you can't. That's not how it works. And it's amazing that he says it, and that the calculator, I guess, if everyone wanted to take less to come back, I guess you could theoretically make it all work. But look, we'll get into our top 50 free agents discussion in a minute, but Nate Schmidt is kind of the poster child for how much everyone has made their value skyrocket here. And great job with this graphic from Pat. But throwing on the UFA to look at this lineup, like Nate Schmidt came on a 1-year deal after being bought out less than 1 calendar year ago by the Winnipeg Jets, signs for $800,000. He's probably in line to get something like a 3-year deal at $3 million, at least 5 points in this final alone. Aaron Ekblad has continued to push up his value. He's going to be very difficult for the Panthers to maintain. Marchand probably priced himself out because you're thinking that they're going to keep Bennett. So there's a lot happening here for the Florida Panthers. They have some cap space, but not an infinite amount. And they're going to have to make some really hard decisions.
Yeah, very, very difficult. I think Aaron Ekblad might be the most difficult of the bunch, if that makes sense, in the perspective of you probably want to have some form of loyalty. He's been there forever, but also like he's a guy, again, he's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. He looked slow to me in that cup final. He didn't look like a guy who I'd go, you know what? Yeah, he can give me a $7 million level for the next 5-6 years.
And he's probably in line to sign a 7 or 8 year deal somewhere, to be honest. So I'm with you. I agree on Ekblad. To me, I think he's the easiest guy to let part ways. Not saying that any of them are easy, but of this group, to me, I think he presents the most risk long-term. And beyond that, not to like quote a crusty NHL GM who likes to say this all the time, but if you want loyalty, get a dog. Like the loyalty is we've paid you all these years, you've made a ton of money, and you just won 2 Stanley Cups in one of the most beautiful places in the world to live. We love you. Come back anytime, but we're going to shake your hand and move on. That's sort of the philosophy and approach that I'd have, not to oversimplify it or to make it crass, but like, I just think even Brad Marchand at 3 years times $8 million, I think is less risk than signing Aaron Ekblad to 6, 7, or 8 years.
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk more free agency, obviously, in our big segment, but let's quickly touch on the Edmonton Oilers, who now bow out in a second straight Stanley Cup final. And the sentiment as they kind of work their way through the playoffs, at least earlier on in this postseason, it was like, hey, maybe this is like the first Tampa Bay team that won it, or that Washington team that won it, where it's like, you're not your most complete roster, not the best team on paper you've ever thrown forward, but somehow it's just a group that finds a way. And I think this Oilers team definitely got exposed for their flaws more in this Stanley Cup final than maybe they even did last year when they did push it to 7 games. But what did you make of this Oilers team and sort of how things fell apart in these last 2 games?
Well, I view it, and this isn't any excuse making at all, I view it as more what the Florida Panthers did to the Edmonton Oilers than what the Edmonton Oilers didn't do against the Florida Panthers, if that makes any sense. Like I just think that they were controlled. And That's not to say that the Oilers are a bad team or that they don't have the goods to ultimately win, because I think in some ways, and a lot of teams fall victim to this thought process, as the Oilers have lost to the Stanley Cup champion 4 seasons in a row now, is that, oh, we're so close, we, run it back, let's go, same thing. I think they do need to make changes. I think there are definite flaws to this team. And I think the biggest one that was highlighted yet again was the disparity in net. Like, Sergei Bobrovsky was phenomenal. He had a .914 save percentage and led the entire postseason in minutes. Saves, all 16 wins required for the second year in a row. No matter what, the best case scenario that you could cook up would be that Stuart Skinner and Cal Pickard split the wins. And that's if they won. So it's not to say that only one guy can get it done, but you need better than what you've had. And I think that's one. I think the Oilers probably need a bit more speed. And the tough part in assessing both of those things for the Oil is that, how are you going to do it? It's not so much the next Bouchard deal or the increased pay that kicks in to Leon Draisaitl or what you're going to have to pay Connor McDavid moving forward. To me, the issue is the Darnell Nurse $9.25 that you have on your cap. If he's playing second pair minutes and is essentially your fourth defenseman with a contract that's buyout proof and really a difficult one to move, how are you going to upgrade your goaltending if you want to? You're committing $50 million to 4 players basically next season and beyond. How? Like, you're going to have to cut elsewhere. And so I think the Oilers have arrived at a bit of a crossroads here. And the other thing that they're going to be battling, and I don't think this playoff says anything about Connor McDavid's legacy. I saw all the tweets about, oh, he's moving on to Toronto or pick another place. He just wants to win. They've proven it 2 years in a row now. Where else are you going to have a better chance to do it than in Edmonton? Another team that has won 6 of the total 16 games required? How does that make any sense? Riddle me that, Batman. So I don't see it. And what I would say is, look, a couple things. Michael Jordan didn't win his first title till 28 and he won 6. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes the right mix. Alex Ovechkin took him a really long time to win his first. And once you win one, you get some of the stink off and that conversation dies down and goes away. But on the other hand, the Oilers, they're not at this level yet. And I hate to do this to the other team that you love, but the Buffalo Bills got to 4 straight Super Bowls and didn't win one. And there's really no team in any of the major 4 pro sports history that I went through in the third period of last night's game that has gotten to back-to-back finals and then ultimately got over the hump. So they've got their work cut out for them.
Absolutely. We'll definitely have more on that as the week rolls on. Just again, half of it's trolling, I know that, but if you had to slap a percentage, like McDavid re-signing in Edmonton this July and getting the 8-year deal, what percentage would you slap on it?
100.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, I would say that as well. I can connect certainly enough dots, but yeah, I just don't get the sense that he's, itching to go into a contract year and tell the Oilers, no, you need to prove something more to me. Let's keep the offseason conversation going and get into today's edition of Icebreakers. It's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian owned and operated since 1972. You can check out their large selection of Canadian lab-grown diamonds and mined diamonds. And you can also apply for a Charm Diamond Flexity card and get approved for no-interest financing on your purchase in minutes. For more information on all of that, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. All right, Frank, we are firmly in off-season mode. And like you said, just a couple of weeks away, less than a couple of weeks away from free agency in the NHL. So you've updated your top 50 free agents list. And the one big riser is Brad Marchand. As he moves from 7 to 3 on your list, is it fair to say that his AAV is going to reflect that jump up?
Yeah, and I feel bad, by the way, these numbers that you see on the screen, the projected cap hits, they're not mine, FYI. They're from AFP Analytics, our friends who do a great job and have nailed so many contracts. But they're also pre-playoffs. So these numbers have changed significantly. And I did some of the math in today's article. The fresh top 50 free agents is now posted on Daily Faceoff. Sam Bennett at 7 times 7.5 gets him more in his pocket than 8 times 10 million in a place like Toronto. Just FYI, it's going to be very difficult for them to beat. Similarly, if Florida wanted to attack Brad Marchand with a 3 or a 4-year deal and even call it $6.5 or $6 million AAV, he's going to net more dollars than he would getting 8 or more than that somewhere else. So not saying that they're going to get a deal done and keep both of them, but I do think that there is a possibility that they could have that math make sense, because people say, oh, Marchand's going to go out and chase every last dollar. Well, within reason. And what is the net dollar as opposed to just the dollar that looks fancy on someone's cap table?
Like, yeah, and I like that you said within reason, because like, yeah, is he really going to sit there and go, nope, I can make $100,000 more playing in Utah next season, I'm leaving Florida? Like, no, he's obviously not going to do that.
I'm going to go to the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah.
Come on. It's not going to happen.
So, okay, then factoring in sort of the Florida effect and the tax implications and all that, if you had to rank their number 2, 3, and 4 on your board, Bennett, Marchand, and Besser, rank them by AAV and who gets the highest AAV, then down to the lowest. Because, I mean, if Besser is signing somewhere else and he's getting the 7-year deal, like maybe, like if Bennett and Marchand do go back to Florida, I'm thinking the bidding war for Besser gets more intense.
I would go Besser, Marchand, Bennett. I think Bennett gets the lowest of the 3. But again, because he's likely to stay in Florida, 7.5, less than 8. I'd say like 8.5, 8, 7.5.
Okay. Let's just sticking in the Cup final. There's one more name that is in your, he's 23rd on your board, Corey Perry. If you had to throw a dart, where do you think Corey Perry's playing hockey next year? Because he said he's coming back.
Yeah, I think he was waiting on an offer from the Oilers. I don't know that that's happened yet. I mean, they should keep him. He fits. Everyone really likes him. He likes it there. His family seems to be pretty comfortable after moving around quite a bit. And you're not going to get much better value elsewhere, particularly for someone who's proven that he can rise the level of his game. But does Toronto make any sense for $1 million? Like if you're Toronto and you go, okay, we could offer Corey Perry $1 million, or we could offer Max Pacioretty $1 million. Which one would we rather have? If they decided on Perry, I don't think that would be the wrong call, even though Pacioretty's younger. But those are the types of sort of bottom of the cap table decisions that ultimately end up being big ones.
Yeah. The 3 defensemen who are the highest on your list are Ekblad, who you have at 5. You have Provorov at 10 and Gavrikov at 11. What do you think the market's going to be like for the other 2 there, who certainly don't come with the Stanley Cup pedigree? But as we kind of talked about earlier, like Frank, if you had to ask me, hey, rank them in order of which one you think helps you win the most, like Ekblad might be 2 on that list. He might be 3.
I'd probably have him 3. I'd probably go Provorov for his mobility, Gavrikov 2 for his defending, and Ekblad 3. Like, again, it's not a knock on Ekblad. This isn't the I Hate Aaron Ekblad show. This is a guy who I just think has a lot of wear on those tires. That can he find a way to rejuvenate and be more impactful? Because just look at the Florida Panthers from 5 years ago till now. They're a healthier team now, meaning they're stronger and deeper, but he's also gone from number 1 defenseman to 3 or 4 in a relatively short period of time. That part of that is also on his own merit.
Yeah. It's interesting that we kind of started the show talking about the Chicago Blackhawks dynasty from the early 2010s and the comparison to Florida. And you look at your top 50 UFAs, and both Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane are on there. Let's start with Toews. What's the market like for him right now? Do you think he is a guy who could maybe make a decision before July 1, since he's already a UFA?
Yeah, he's certainly put himself in a position in conversation with teams to make that call. Colorado and Winnipeg are definitely 2 of the teams in the mix. I think there's one more. My guess would be Vegas or Toronto. I don't know that he'd have the interest or stomach to go to Toronto. But I've always been real curious about Vegas, a team that, if they're going to be big game hunting, are always also going to be in the mix for strong value adds. So I would keep an eye out for those teams, and no team could use, well, the Jets could certainly use the support down the middle, and the hometown connection is huge. But Colorado, with their cap hell, if you could plug Taves into your 3C spot and then move out Charlie Coyle, the cap savings that you have could be massive.
Yeah, and I mean, Colorado, we outlined it earlier in the week. They're in a world of hurt with just the $1.2 million and needing to bring in a few more pieces to this roster. So yeah, you do the math of going from 5.25 Charlie Coyle to a dirt cheap. Even if you got to bonus it and kick the can down the road with Taves, like, you save yourself $4.2 million next year. You could bring back Jonathan Drouin and then still have a little bit more money kicking around.
Yeah, and then what happens with trying to figure out their defense? Instead of Drouin, you might be able to keep Ryan Lindgren or someone that helps your team.
Yeah, that's fair. And with Patrick Kane too, I mean, it's a guy who he had 59 points in 72 games last year. Like, if I was a team, I'm just looking right now, his most common centermen last year at 5-on-5 were Marco Kasper and Andrew Kopp. If I'm a team with a real skilled centerman, I'm going, hey, if Patty Kane put up 59 points last year with those two guys down the middle, man, what could he do with maybe my second line center or my top line center or on my power play unit? Like, I think there should be a really strong market for him.
Yeah, and he's also still strongly considering the Detroit Red Wings and coming back again. So I think that remains a significant option for Patrick Kane, and something that Steve Yzerman's trying to get to the bottom of here in the next couple of days, as obviously all of these conversations around the league are heating up. What do you do next? And if you don't have Patrick Kane in those 50-some points, how are you going to replace it?
Well, that's actually perfect, Frank, and we can move on from this to Ask DFO, because we got one about the Detroit Red Wings from Adam, who's a Wings fan. He said hashtag Ask DFO is a big move coming for Detroit. Jason Robertson, Mitch Marner, Aaron Ekblad were the three names that he put in there. Do you think Yzerman's itching to maybe swing big and not just run it back with Kane and the same guys as last year?
They desperately need to. Kane and Tarasenko is on the trade targets board. They're nice pieces, but those are final pieces of the puzzle that you stamp in there to help get a team from the conference final to winning a Stanley Cup. They are not drive you through the regular season and wedge you into the playoffs players. And beyond that, Detroit significantly needs upgrades on their defense, and they have to go out and fix that this summer, or else you can cancel their playoff plans before the season even starts.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Again, if there's not a big splash, it's not a team you're going to be buying stock on this summer, which ties in nicely to what I wanted to talk about for our daily bets and Bet365. You can download the app today and use the code NATION. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. And Frank, with the Stanley Cup handed out last night, why not take a look at next year's Stanley Cup final odds? Already up at Bet365. The Carolina Hurricanes are the top dogs at plus 700, actually co-leaders with the Edmonton Oilers. And then the Panthers at plus 750. The Avs and Stars at plus 900 round out your top five for next season. But I love playing the game of maybe a bet on someone and you wait for the cash out to get good. So is there a team maybe lower down somewhere that you're looking at and going like, I'd buy stock on them right now before the offseason?
I mean, look at the Rangers. Look how high they are at plus 3,300. They didn't even make the playoffs this season. I don't understand some of the thought process. I know that part of that's going to be managing out the bets that you do get from the massive Rangers fan base. But we had another question in our Ask DFO inbox today that said, what Western Conference team is a surprise for next year that could contend? I'm not predicting that they're going to win the Stanley Cup. No team really makes a leap like that. But I think the Minnesota Wild at plus 3,500 are pretty juicy, that they're a team that they gave Vegas a run for the money. And we know that, the Oilers dispatched Vegas relatively cleanly. I just think Minnesota has pieces in place to be a difficult playoff team. And if they add a sizable piece or two to their team, I don't mean height-wise, I mean in impact. They've got cap space now for the first time in a long time. They could really be a team to watch next season and beyond.
Frank, it's like you're reading my notes. That's the exact team I had written down. I wanted to talk about Minnesota. I was like 35-1. Like, I could see them making some big moves this offseason, and all of a sudden they're up there, not quite maybe with Dallas and Colorado in the Central, but like even Winnipeg's 22-1. I could see going into next season, Minnesota jumping from 35-1 to like 17-18-1 and being, somewhere in the mix of that 10-12 range. So I love the Minnesota shout, Frank. I think they could have a really good offseason. Let's wrap up the show.
I just think you can cross off a couple teams on this list that are not winning the Stanley Cup next season. New Jersey, LA, Ottawa, probably Utah, probably Washington. I mean, you can go through it and start to really whittle it down.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time. And I wanted to just kind of put a bow on this season, Frank. And Paul Paduti put out some of the numbers of just how good the Cup finals have been as of late. In the 6 years since in the 6 Cup finals since 2020, those are 4 of the most goal-heavy postseasons in the last 20 or in the Cap era. High-scoring playoffs. You look back at this year, Frank, we had the Mikko Rantanen drama. We had Four Nations Faceoff just blowing everybody's expectations out of the water. When it comes to growth of this sport, the product on the ice, how good it is, off the ice, how entertaining it's been, is it safe to say that this has been one of the best seasons in the NHL in the salary cap era in the last 26 years?
I truly believe that we are in a golden age of NHL hockey. That the superstar talent that's on the ice, the speed of the game, the quality of game presentation, and a lot of other things have made it at varying points, the lead changes, the momentum swings, must-watch appointment TV. I just wish that it had way better saturation. It does in Canada, but doesn't in the US. It's still market by market. And the TV ratings, unfortunately, really, really sagged in the US this postseason, and particularly in this Cup final, because Florida just isn't a draw as a hockey market. It's just a fact. It's important in that market, but nationally, people aren't tuning in to see it. And so that part eats away at me. I hate to be the guy that sits there and is like, please like our sport. But I can't think of this league being in a better position than it is right now. You think about last year, and they're always trying to improve and get to a better place. Four Nations and everything else that came with the entirety of this season. It was a massive year for the NHL.
Yeah, it was great. We missed too. Jeremiah points it out because, of course, he does. Ovi breaking the goal record as well. That was a pretty big storyline during the regular season. But now we are on to the offseason. Tomorrow will be the 1 week mark leading up to the NHL draft. We'll have Stephen Ellis on to give us his final draft rankings, and we'll have a whole bunch more offseason talk as well. Everybody in the chat, you were great. That is a wrap on a Wednesday edition of Daily Faceoff Live. We'll see you all right back here tomorrow at noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.